So very interesting. There's history embedded in our old episodes. I suggest we all take a look at them. That, of course, was Megyn Kelly. And today there's new coy sort of reports coming out from the Mayo Clinic, who now say hydroxychloroquine can be used for early COVID. And the CDC website, which says ivermectin can be used for early COVID treatment. All of a sudden, after destroying untold numbers of lives, which with sort of McCarthy-era tactics, and by the way, 200 professors have lost their careers, their livelihood, because of spurious accusations. Are we going to look back on this with the kind of horror that we should? Again, it's a slow-moving train. The data's coming back. Data's coming out. We're trying to figure things out. It's really interesting. That was back on the heels of... oh, shoot, I'm blanking on the NFL player's name who had sudden death out on the field. Damar, what is it?
Hamlin.
Damar Hamlin. We're going to talk to Ed Dowd in just a second. He's got new data for us. Don't go away.
Our laws, as it pertains to substances, are draconian and bizarre. The psychopaths start this way. He was an alcoholic because of social media and pornography, PTSD, love addiction, fentanyl and heroin. Ridiculous. I'm a doctor, for sake. Where the hell do you think I learned that? I'm just saying, you go to treatment before you kill people. I am a clinician. I observe things about these chemicals. Let's just deal with what's real. We used to get these calls on Loveline all the time. Educate adolescents and to prevent and to treat. If you have trouble you can't stop and you want help stop it, I can help. I got a lot to say. I got a lot more to say.
These products have transformed my life and Susan's and saved our marriage. Discover the key to oral hygiene, regardless of your current daily dental routine. Whether you diligently brush and floss multiple times a day, or you struggle, you got bleeding gums, bad breath, plaque buildup, this revelation is for both of you. Surprisingly, over 350,000 Americans experience health issues that may be connected to their toothbrush or even caused by it, ranging from heart or blood sugar problems, forgetfulness, digestive difficulties, immune issues, all related to oral hygiene. Scientific studies have shown that a simple switch of your toothbrush can lead to a healthier teeth and potentially save your marriage. Yes, save your marriage. Our study, we did a personal study. My wife, Susan, hates the sound of the sonic toothbrushes, but introducing the Real White Sonic toothbrush, of course, also their hydroxyapatite dirty mouth mineral toothpaste by Primal Life Organics. These products have transformed my life and Susan's and saved our marriage. It's much quieter. It's a very powerful toothbrush, but it is quiet and it saved our marriage. So the Real White Sonic toothbrush from Primal Life Organics stands out among all other electric toothbrushes I've tried. It effectively eliminates plaque, harmful bacteria, promotes gum health. Get yours and enjoy 60% off at naturaltoothbrush.com/DREW. Welcome, everyone. Of course, we are on the Restream, and we are also over on the Rumble Rants watching you guys. We saw some of our, molten salt. Those are veneers, but they were also straightened. So good times. I had messed up lower teeth for a long time.
And then you went on HLN and I said, dude,
I know
you're on the news. You got to fix your teeth.
Oh, yes, you did.
I could see it.
It was not something
I had mine too. I had the worst teeth ever.
That's right.
But you know what? Too. I got to tell you, this Primal Life stuff is the best toothpaste. And the toothbrush is amazing. I'm totally sold.
Well, now you can pile on. Why has it saved our marriage?
Because of your annoying toothbrush that keeps me up every time.
Wakes you up.
Yeah, wakes me up or keeps me up. Okay, so, right. Oh my God.
Especially, it's when we travel, especially.
So we went on a cruise and we had like a dating game and they said, what is annoying about your husband? And I said, his toothbrush.
No, they had me predict what you were going to say and I predicted it precisely. So now we've taken care of that. So
we won that one.
So there you go. All right. So as I said, I'm Caleb, have you set up the Twitter Spaces? Is there a problem going on today with that? I'm not seeing it for some reason.
Working on it.
Okay. So we'll get a Twitter Spaces going and perhaps we'll take some calls there. As I said, we're watching you over in the chat rooms. Today, though, someone that is a favorite of everyone on this platform, which is, of course, Ed Dowd. Let me remind you of the particulars about Ed. Oh, goodness sakes, I've lost that spot. Give me 1 second. Sorry, guys. I'm going to give you all the particulars about Ed. I'm so deep in his slides that they have taken over my, hang on, everybody. This is one of my emails have been overwhelmed by so many things. Here we go. All right. As you probably all know about Ed anyway, he is
Everybody loves Ed.
Founder of Finance Technology, also author of Cause Unknown, The Epidemic of Sudden Death, 2021 and 2022. Ed was a former Wall Street analyst who utilized pattern recognition to get ahead of peers during his career as a stock picker. As he says, he just looks at the numbers. And he noticed a rise in reports about sudden death amongst athletes and young people across the country. He has gotten very deep into the data and very interested, and he has a new update for us, particularly on cardiovascular deaths, where the data is a little less opaque, and that is in the UK, where the NHS provides that data for the most part. Please welcome Ed Dowd.
Thanks for having me on again, Dr. Drew.
So should we go right to the data? I was looking at it before the show, and it's quite intriguing.
Sure. Let me just preface it by saying this is a further study based upon a report we dropped on your show. Initially, the UK personal independence payment system for disabilities, where we showed all sorts of signals in disabilities in 2022. And we're now digging into deaths. That was just disabilities. Now we're looking at excess deaths in one particular body system and cause, cardiovascular disease. So we focused in on that. We did that because there's been a lot of media reports of sudden athletic deaths, celebrities, you name it, and everyone in the mainstream media seems to want to indicate that it's anecdotal. So Carlos and Yuri and myself wanted to figure out whether there was a signal. And we looked at two databases, the registered deaths database in the ONS and the all-cause deaths database. One of the pitfalls of our study, but we made adjustments for it, is there is a lag between the causes and the registered deaths. The registered deaths capture all the dead. Then the causes are assigned. In normal times, the lag isn't that big, but because a lot of the deaths have been younger age folks lately, there's been quite a lag. And in 21, there's still an 8% lag. They're still catching up, assigning causes to the registered deaths. And in 2022, there's a 30% lag. But the raw data, without us making adjustments, we adjust for this. The raw data without adjustment still shows a signal in cardiovascular deaths above trend in 21 and 22. So even unadjusted, it still shows a signal. Once we adjust it, and apply a ratio analysis, that's where we get the signal. And the signal is quite strong. And let me just go through the numbers real quick. I got 4 slides to get through. Then we can have a nice discussion about it and what should be done. This is the first analysis, and we're focusing in on age groups 15 through 44 in the UK. And you can see cardiovascular deaths were actually trending down starting in 2010. And right before COVID hit in 2020, it was about eight deaths per 100,000. And then it did rise in 2020, and we can talk about that. It went back up to 9. Then it went to 10, and now it's at 11. That just shows you the trend change and how alarming that is, and that there is a signal going on in the UK of cardiovascular deaths excessively beyond the trend that was established. That started in 2020. If you want to go to the next slide, we can put this in percentage terms and standard deviation measurements. So in 2020, cardiovascular deaths went up 13%, and that was about a 3 standard deviation move. That's alarming. That signals something changed. But then in 2021, it went up 30%. That was a 7.5 standard deviation from the long-term trend established by 2010, and then in 2022, it's up 44% or 10.5 standard deviations. So these are what we call strong signals. It's just a signal that whatever the trend was, it's been broken. It's not an anomaly. Just to give your audience an idea of what a standard deviation means, a 3.8 standard deviation is the chance of lightning hitting you at least once in your lifetime. So these events are rare and they're different from the norm. So that's why we put these into what we call Z-scores, standard deviations. And that as finance analysts and scientists would look at this as well, it's a way for us to say, hey, this is a signal, it needs investigation, something is off the rails. So that's what the message I want to get across to anybody from the UK regulatory agency. If you have a signal, you have a strong signal, and it needs to be talked about and investigated in this age group 15 through 44. The next chart, we were able to break it down into men versus women. You can see here that in 2020-21, women and men were about the same, but something's happened in 2022. Men are now significantly higher than women. We're not doctors. We speculated it may have something to do with more physical activity, but again, we defer to the doctors to figure out why men are now getting the brunt of it. And then the final slide kind of just gives a market size as to what's going on here. We refer to a paper, Borgen et al., it was a Swiss paper looking at the incidence of just one part of cardiovascular disease, which is myocarditis. And their paper cited 2,800 per 100,000 of an issue. Now, that doesn't mean everyone's going to die. That's just, and they call it mild myocarditis, mild. Now, we can debate what that means. And then over on the right, you see our data, and our data suggests that there's still a lot of growth. We call it the market size. So what's the growth in this market? This is what I did as a portfolio manager. If this was a new market and sales were the disabilities per 100K and the deaths per 100K in 2022, we'd say, hey, how much more room do we have to grow here? I don't want to alarm people, but if you apply this 2,800 per 100K number from the Borgen et al. Paper, it sizes the market in the UK at 650,000 people in that age group, 15 through 44. Let's give the benefit of the doubt to the mild myocarditis and say only 10% of those 650,000 develop a future problem. That's a 65,000 person market of individuals that could develop either disability or death down the line. So that's what we do. That's all just back of the envelope math. I'm not trying to say it's true, but that's what I would do as a portfolio manager, try to figure out. We call it total available market. I made up an acronym, total available market for future death and disability. I know it's macabre, but that's how we think on Wall Street. So we're trying to size the market, and the market looks pretty big, unfortunately.
And then what is the PIP clearance? What is that?
The PIP, that's from our prior study. That's the number of excess claims.
I see.
In just cardiovascular.
And then those are excess events on your graph there. Cardiovascular claims. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've got a million questions. What do you take away from this?
Well, the takeaway is something's happened since 2020 and really started accelerating in 21 and 22, where cardiovascular events in the UK, and again, we can probably think that this is going on in other developed nations, took off, especially in young people. And that's not expected. That's what the insurance companies that I've been reporting on are seeing. At least one part of the deaths, excess claims are seeing. Again, cardiovascular is just one single body system. There's other issues going on in the UK disability system. All body systems seem to be off the rails, but cardiovascular is one we focused on because that causes sudden death. And the bottom line is it needs to be investigated. Whether you believe my reason for it or not, it needs to be investigated.
Right. This has been and I've noticed John Campbell is screaming about this a lot too, which is there are excess deaths. What is in there? Let's explain it. If it's COVID, let's deal with it. If it's vaccine, let's deal with it. If it's both, let's deal with it and figure out what we're doing. What both he and I continue to shake our head about is why why aren't the government agencies all over this? It's just so odd. Or do they know something we don't know? That's what I'm starting to get paranoid a little bit. I started thinking, my goodness, they're pushing the vaccine for 6 months and above. Do they know something that they're not telling us? Is there something about this as a bioweapon and some reported potential catastrophe downstream that they're worrying about that they're not telling us about? Is that even a possibility in your mind?
Anything's on the table, and I've always said,
right.
We have our thesis. You know what my thesis is. I'm open to other explanations, and if that turned out to be true, that would be a problem. But so far, I've heard the same speculation, but I haven't seen any evidence for it yet.
It's interesting. I haven't really heard anybody speculate that. It just naturally occurs to me, I guess. And when you figure out the cardiovascular incidents here, are you opening up diagnostic codes? How are you getting this data?
Yeah, let me go to the report. It's ICD-10 codes.
Right, the I codes.
Yeah, the I codes.
Okay.
ICD-10 codes, we talk about it in section 3.2. We refer to there's 10 cardiovascular codes that we're pulling from this database.
Right. And, the I codes is a kind of a diverse set of codes. There's valvular heart disease, there's muscle disease, there's coronary disease. Did any amongst those stand up? I mean, the one that, the coronary disease, I25.10, did that show up more than others?
So we're going to do it. There's a further on study we want to do, digging into just what you just said. But we did this data because there was a strong signal in cardiovascular. We also want to get down to the issue of whether it's chronic or acute, because that would also give us a lot of information. Because chronic is, there were issues beforehand, and it's different than acute. So we want to figure out how much of it is acute versus chronic. Those types of things, and there's going to be follow-on papers as we delve deeper and deeper into the data. So you're right.
Actually is hard.
We want to know.
Go ahead.
We want to know
that actually is hard to pull out of. But you're pulling out chronic versus acute from an ICD-10 code is actually hard to see. It's because when somebody has a heart attack, you put coronary disease. When you're seeing them 6 months later for their Lipitor assessment and how they're doing post angiogram, you put the same code. So it's one was an acute event and the other is the chronic management of that acute event. So I don't know how you're going to tease these things out unless it's valvular heart disease and heart failure, which again, it could have developed after the vaccine and then be managed, 12 months down the line. It's very hard to, I don't know how you're going to do that.
Yeah, same here. Carlos is working on it. He's a genius. He's going to try to figure out something. But right now, those are questions that we have, unanswered questions. And, that's what we do. We have this study raises more questions. For instance, what happened in 2020? Why did cardiovascular deaths go up 13%? Now, 3 standard deviations can occur. It's not, that's plus or minus 1 or 2 standard deviations is noise. 3 is hey, something's going on here. So we want to, what happened in 2020 in the UK? Was it COVID? Was it lockdown? There's confounding factors. So we want to isolate these factors. But what we do know is in 2022, it's a strong signal at this point, and we suspect 2023 will be even higher than 2022 because excess mortality in the UK in this age group has already hit a new all-time high in our annualized 23 numbers.
Oh my! And I know you've had some contact with John Bodwin, right?
Yeah.
And he's been looking at the G codes, which are the sort of stroke-esque codes, or at least neurology codes, which stroke is a big part of the G codes. Are you guys looking there at all? Have you seen his stuff? Do you have any thoughts about that?
We've been talking to him. We're going to look at, again, this is a work in progress. We're going to go into every body cause, hopefully at some point, And Carlos is even thinking we can predict. We'll have to like create some sort of IP around this, but predictive models for figuring out these types of causes ahead of time, these excess claims, and then sell it to insurance companies who can then get their actuarial tables correct because they don't seem to know what's going on.
Do they have concerns about what's going on?
They do, but this is a slow, sleepy industry. Josh Sterling, who I did some early work with, he was a former Wall Street sell-side analyst. He has formed the Insurance Coalition to Save Lives, where the vaccine is on the table, but it's not the biggest focus. But there is a quiet kind of coalition to figure out what's going on. There's the elephant in the room that still can't be talked about at a lot of these companies, but the hope is that Josh will break that glass ceiling and this become open discussion. I have whistleblowers who believe what I believe, and they're seeing horrendous numbers right now in the third quarter. Their excess death claims in group life are going back up, and their long-term disability is accelerating, unfortunately.
I'm assuming you're tilting at the notion that it is vaccine related. How do you tease out COVID versus vaccine versus COVID and vaccine, given that pretty much everyone's had COVID and vaccine?
Yeah, no, exactly. That's a great question, and that's part of the questions that need to be asked. And the regulators have the information. We don't. I would love to get the status of those excess claims and vaccination status. The insurance companies in the U.S. would want that too, but they don't have access to that either. They might actually sue for that information at some point. There's some whispering that might occur because they're number people. They want to be very sure before they do anything, and they want to, they're not investors like we are. They look at history and numbers, so they want to get access to this data.
Right.
They've yet to be able to get access to it, and the transparency is key here. And why wouldn't you release the vaccination status? If we wanted to figure out if the vaccine was doing something.
Right. So you're saying that we don't even know the vaccine status represented by these numbers, right? I mean, we can assume that most all have had a vaccine. What's odd to me is that you're not allowed to ask any questions if there's even a possibility of implicating the vaccine, right? Isn't that sort of what we're up against here? You can't ask anything, even though it all might be COVID. Even though it all might be COVID, you're not allowed to ask questions because, it might have something to do with the vaccine.
Yeah, I remember the Damar Hamlin incident referenced earlier on this show. And what I found very curious about that was the indignation that anybody would dare ask his vaccination status, where, a mere 18 months earlier, you had to show your papers to get into a restaurant and show your vaccination status. Yeah. So I just found that ironic.
Yeah, it is a lot of things was ironic about that whole event. But I wanted to ask something about the regulators that had occurred to me. I guess it's that why do you imagine, do you have any theory as to why they're being so circumspect about releasing their information? Oh, and I wanted to say one other thing. I don't know if you're aware, but so why are they circumspect is one question, and I'll let you answer that in a second. But I don't know if you saw my interview with Dr. Kelly's interview with Dr. Fraiman, Fraiman. John Campbell did an interview with him as well. And in that interview, he said he discovered one thing jumped out for him that has stayed with me ever since. A lot of things jumped out, but one he thought was just mind-boggling. And that was that when he was asking how they were using the VAERS data, they said, no, the VAERS data does not show much vaccine. There's not a lot of vaccine consequence in the VAERS. So much of it is not vaccine. He goes, how do you know that? He goes, in their response, literally, quote, was, well, we got a guy that goes out and assesses. So they literally have somebody that goes out and determines whether something is or is not, something indeterminate, something literally that's not determinable. It's just data. And rather than accept the data, they go out and go, imagine during the Vioxx debacle, if Merck had sent out people who said, no, that's not the Vioxx. That's not Vioxx. That's just heart attacks, because heart attacks are common. Not the Vioxx. It's why? Because our guy said so. That's literally what our regulators do. Are you aware of that? A, and B, why do you think they're so circumspect?
Well, you just answered part of your question for me. They have a guy. They have a guy. I mean, they have a guy that dismisses out of hand that it's the vaccine. Okay, fine. Well, let's before I speculate, let's state the obvious. We've uncovered signal after signal after signal from publicly available databases. There are regulators who have the same data and even more data, and they get billions of dollars in budgets, and they have statisticians, and they have people that look at numbers and create tables and look at slice the data. They have not seen these signals apparently. That myself and others, I mean, we're not the only ones that have looked at this. There are lots of people looking at excess mortality, and there seems to be signals all over the place. So that's the first question: is why are they not able to see the signals? And if they aren't, why are we paying them? Now, let's assume that they are. Let's go to speculation period now, time. Let's assume they see the signals. Why aren't they telling us? Well, I can only speculate, and it has to do with politics and if what these signals that we're seeing are related to the vaccine, it's going to take down a bunch of institutions and politicians and CEOs. So I think that they're loath to make enemies, and it's the institutional imperative that I used to see in corporations, now in regulatory agencies, where those who advance don't advance the public good, they advance their own careers. So I think we see a lot of that going on.
So I want to emphasize again what your data found. You went in, you looked at the I codes, the cardiovascular codes, and as of 2020, you found a 3 standard deviation increase in 20 that went up to 7.5 and then now 10.5 standard deviations off what would be expected cardiovascular deaths for that same period of time. Men doing worse than women, and it's in the age group of 15 to 44. We don't even know what's going on in the elderly population. It might be a lot worse, correct?
I may be misspeaking here, but Carlos said there was a signal there as well, but he wanted to focus on this group because this group's not expected to have these kind of events. So this is why we focused on them. I'd have to check back with Carlos, but I'm pretty sure there's a signal in the elderly as well. We just haven't put it into a paper.
Well, the reason it is so important is that the young do not have a lot to gain from being vaccinated, as Omicron has almost no significant effect. We think, unless all this standard deviation is due to the virus, the spike protein from the virus rather than the spike protein from the vaccine, and yet it could be either or both, correct?
It certainly could, but we suspect it's more of the vaccine. And I keep going back to what I talked about early on in your show months ago, the temporal event in the third quarter of 2021, August, September, October timeframe, in the Society of Actuary numbers, where excess mortality for millennials spiked up to 84% from 30%. And we call that a temporal event. It just was such a huge rise from 30 to 84%. What did we know happened then? Mandates and vaccines. So that's why I keep going back that the vaccine is the likely culprit. Am I dismissing COVID as causing some of this? No, but I'd certainly love to find out what the mixed ratio. Is it 10% long COVID and 90% vaccine, or is it 50-50? That needs to be found out at some point.
Yeah, I completely agree. Is there a world in which I'm trying to decide, again, could there be suicide? Could there other things? Could be drug addiction embedded in this as well. When you look at excess mortality, did you try to ferret out which ICD-10 code was predominantly responsible for the excess mortality?
I think we're going to be working on that in the future, but we just looked initially at all-cause mortality. And again, I point out to the temporal spike in the group life policy holders, which are Fortune 500 and mid-sized companies. That to me has always been a smoking gun. And I just can't wrap my head around a suicide pact in those highly employed folks or missed cancer screening appointments, which really doesn't happen for that age group, and or drug overdoses. You don't keep your job very long if you're a fentanyl or heroin user. So are they in the all-cause mortality?
State that data. State the data again so everyone's clear what you're talking about.
The Society of Actuaries in 2022, August, put out a report on 2021. They found 40% excess all-cause mortality claims in 2021. But if you looked at actually quarter by quarter by quarter, the millennials, 25 through 44, had the highest excess mortality of anyone in a very short period of time. It spiked to 84% excess claims in that age group. And then it started coming back down. It's running right now around 25%. So there was an event in the third quarter of 2021. And my speculation has always been that event was job mandates and vaccine mandates.
And to be clear, by that point in 2021, we were into the Omicron era. And why would we be seeing a spike unless something about the long-term effects of COVID was having something downstream, right? Which is possible.
Well, why would it spike all of a sudden? Again, I'm just an analyst. Why would it spike in the third quarter of 2021, then come back down? My suspicion is they rolled out the vaccines. We all knew that that this COVID was affecting mostly old folks. And I remember myself as a young man working, 80 hours a week. I didn't have time to go get a vaccine for something in my head, I thought I didn't need. But then, lo and behold, the emails go out. You get this, or you lose your job. It pulled forward what I called a lot of millennial hesitant vaccine people, and voila, that's what that was, that temporal spike.
All right, we're going to take a little break. I have the potential to take some calls perhaps here too as well. So I see a few of you with your hand up. I'll see if I can get some calls perhaps as well. You ready to take, you up for a couple calls, Ed?
Oh, sure.
All right. And where would you like people to go to find your materials? And do you have another book coming out too, don't you?
Not to my knowledge.
No, I thought you told me last time you were working on, I guess, more publications coming out is what you were telling me.
Yeah.
Where should they go to find your materials?
financetechnologies.com, spelled with a PH. We have all sorts of different reports and projects, all-cause mortality, disabilities in the UK and the US, mRNA, a clinical study analysis of the SAEs, linking them to the real-world events, the UK PIP data, the UK Cardiovascular report. We're going to be, we have some NIH analysis, we have absence rate analysis, and work time lost analysis. So we have a lot of data. More continues to be published. We're going deeper and deeper into this the more we find out.
And again, finance at PHINANCE Technologies, and a lot of NHS stuff, which is the British healthcare system. Is that because they are more forthcoming with their data, or better at collecting the data, or both?
Yeah, it's one of the biggest. It's one of the biggest employers in the UK, and they actually present this data. So we were able to do an analysis of the NHS absence rates and work time lost, and it essentially mirrored the UK overall picture and the US picture. So we have 3 different databases all confirming the same thing, that absences and work time lost are up 12 standard deviations above a 20-year trend in the UK and the US in 2022.
And Dowd, we'll take a little break. Be right back after this. Fall is right around the corner, which means dry, flaky red skin from allergy season is coming with it. But the best way to take care of your skin is with our skincare secret, Genucel. You don't need to worry about that puffy, tired eye look or those annoying dark spots or even dry, flaky skin, because Genucel Skincare has you covered. Susan and I love our Genucel products so much, we want you to try our personally curated skincare bundles. It's risk-free at Genucel.com/Drew. Genucel works so well, you can see the results in this unplanned live moment on our show when the Redness Repair Cream repaired my skin in just minutes right before your eyes. Their concentrated vitamin C serum helps keep your skin plump and hydrated. Plus, with their immediate effects, you can see astonishing results in under 12 hours. Quick, effective, and easy. Go to genucell.com/Drew right now to try our bundles and save over 60% today. And remember to enroll in Genucell's world-class concierge program for additional savings and free shipping. Don't wait. It's genucell.com/Drew, genucel.com/DREW. There are 3 reasons the central banks are dumping the U.S. dollar: inflation, deficit spending, and our insurmountable national debt. The fact is, there is one asset that has withstood famine, wars, political and economic upheaval dating back to biblical times: gold. And you can own it in a tax shelter retirement account with the help of Birch Gold. That's right, Birch Gold will help you convert an existing IRA or 401k, maybe from a previous employer, into an IRA in gold. And the best part, you don't pay a penny out of pocket. Just visit birchgold.com/Drew for your free info kit. They'll hold your hand through the entire process. Think about this. When currencies fail, gold is a safe haven. How much more time does the dollar have? Birch Gold has an A+ rating with Better Business Bureau and thousands of happy customers. I do not give financial advice, and previous performance is no guarantee of future performance. Visit birchgold.com/Drew to get your free info kit on gold. That is birchgold.com/DREW. I think everyone knows the next medical crisis could be just around the corner, whether it comes in the form of another pandemic or something much more routine like a tick bite. You and your family need to be prepared. That's where the Wellness Company comes in. You know the Wellness Company. We have their physicians on, like Dr. McCullough, frequently. The Wellness Company and their doctors are medical professionals you can trust. And their new medical emergency kits are the gold standard when it comes to keeping you safe and healthy.
It's a safety net. It's an insurance policy
absolutely.
that you hope you're not going to
100%.
need, but if you need it, you sure as heck are going to wish you had it if you need it.
Be ready for anything. This medical emergency kit contains an assortment of life-saving medications, including ivermectin, Z-Pak. The medical emergency kit provides a guidebook to aid in the safe use of all these life-saving medications. From anthrax to tick bites to COVID-19, the Wellness Company's medical emergency kit is exactly what you need to have on hand to be prepared. Rest assured, knowing that you have emergency antibiotics, antivirals, and antiparasitics on hand to help you and your family stay safe from whatever life throws at you next. Go to drdrew.com/TWC. That is drdrew.com/TWC to get 10% off today. Just click on that link. Back with Ed Dowd. And as I said, we're trying to take up the calls here.
Also, make sure you go to drdrew.com/sponsors to get all the coupon codes and links to our great sponsors who keep this boat afloat.
Also, I in the chat room, at the Twitter Spaces, I see the Real Truther, whose Twitter analysis I actually admire greatly. He's a very interesting opinion and analysis of data. And again, I try to look at all sides that's coming in, and I'm trying to get him to come up and talk to you and see how he'd like to discuss your data with you. Also, let's bring in Just Day D, whatever that is. Let's see, Just Data. Justice Through Data. Let's bring Justice Through Data on up. And again, Truther, if you'd like to come up, I'd love to have you come in here and discuss Ed's data. You may be thinking of things that I don't think of. Here we go. Are you there? You're unmuted. It should be there.
Yes, I am.
Caleb, is everything? There you are. Go right ahead.
So thank you for the input. And Ed, as always, thank you for the analysis. Was certainly interested in a bit more data around 2020, as there were no vaccines then, as well as 2023. There's very few, if not no vaccines taken in 2023, yet we still have COVID infections. So why would you attribute it to the vaccine and not the infection?
Oh, wait, hang on a second. Hang on one second, Ed. We're not hearing Ed for some reason. Susan, is that here or is that Caleb?
Try again.
Anybody?
Ed.
Can you hear me?
There we go. You're back. Go ahead. So why?
Yeah.
That's what I was asking. Why not COVID? Why not COVID plus vaccine? Why vaccine?
Well, Dr. Ryan Cole has said that unfortunately he thinks some vaccine people who took the vaccine are producing spike protein well after it was supposed to disappear from the system. And excess mortality continues to rise, especially in the UK. It's hit a new all-time high in 2023. So if you're attributing it to COVID, why don't we have a pandemic announced because deaths are worse in this age group now. And I would also say that the variant is so weak at this point, it does not, in my estimation, cause people to be taken out to the woodshed when they get it.
I want to say that all we know really is that the syndrome is weak, right? We know that this infecting agent with the predominant host environment, which is previously infected, previously vaccinated, almost everybody, in that environment, the syndrome of infection is quite mild. That's just simply the case. Would you agree with that analysis, Ed?
Yes. Okay. So my what I would have loved to have seen is the disabilities and excess deaths trend back towards normal. And that would have been my best. I'm not rooting for excess deaths and disabilities. I was hoping they would trend lower. And then, unfortunately, there was an inflection point this summer in U.S. disabilities. That inflected up about 1 million. We just got the 2023 data in the UK for this age group. That, on an annualized basis, is now at a new all-time high. So the question has to be asked: why is it accelerating? And if it's due to the fact that these vaccines may have blown up people's immune systems, there's other things going on here, and this needs to be investigated. So at the very least, let's say I'm wrong and it's not the vaccines. Why is there no investigation into any of these things that are going on? And if you want to blame COVID, if it turns out to be COVID, sure, I'll admit I'm wrong, but it's not being talked about from our regulators and our politicians and the media, which is very curious to me.
So it's curious that to restate, but now, by the way, when I asked that question, you pointed at the actuarial data, right? That also there was that sudden temporal spike associated with people returning to work and the mandate. So, but that's another issue. But to this issue, it's odd that most countries are documenting excess mortality, particularly in younger age groups, that are deeply concerning. And yet no one seems to be parsing out the diagnosis codes that are represented, or at least looking at, like you are, specific diagnosis codes that I can find. I can't find any publications on that. So, Truther, you did come up. Go ahead and unmute yourself. I'd love to hear from you.
Hey, are you talking to me, Dr. Drew?
I am talking to you.
Thanks for having me on the show. Appreciate it. And thanks for Ed Dowd coming on today. Yeah, so I had two issues to sort of push back against some of his claims. The first is his major claim is the fall of 2021, is when he believes that's when vaccines were killing people. But in America at that time, that's the exact moment of Delta. You had mentioned Omicron. It was actually Delta. That's when Delta was hitting younger people. In the exact age groups he's claiming were caused by vaccines, the hardest, especially in the Southeast region, which was heavily unvaccinated in those age groups. And it was significant amount of unvaccinated people dying, younger, unhealthy, of course, suffering from obesity, diabetes, et cetera, because a lot of unhealthy younger people live in the Southeast. These are the people that were dying. Now, you combine that with the overdose deaths. You combine that with the increased record gun violence, the increased record alcohol deaths, missed medical care deaths from the pandemic, et cetera. And that's literally the exact cause of those deaths. Vaccines were actually lowering excess deaths and do lower excess deaths. That's been shown multiple times, because if you look at the states or the counties.
Wait, let's let him answer that. Hold on, let's let him answer that. So, and by the way, for a 30-year-old, missed medical appointments has no impact. Even if you have diabetes, it really isn't. 30-year-olds are good.
We're talking about people that were very unhealthy, upwards up to 65, not just 30-year-olds, 45s, 50-years-olds. People have
his data. His data is he's talking about 15 to 44-year-olds only.
Right, and I'm specifically talking about 20 to 44-year-olds, because the one country he seems to ignore is Sweden, which we actually have a good control group, because Sweden didn't have those issues we had. They didn't have the overdoses, they didn't have the gun violence, they didn't have the missed medical cares. 20 to 44 in Sweden, higher vaccine rates than the United States, about 86%. Higher vaccine rates, negative excess in 2021, negative excess in 2022, and double negative excess in 2023, minus 7%, minus 7%, minus 14%, significantly historic negative excess in a group with higher vaccine rates as a perfect control group to prove that it cannot be the vaccines, unless you can prove that Sweden got a placebo.
Okay, hold on. So let's do several different questions being asked there. So go ahead, Ed. What do you want to address?
In terms of the smoking gun, I'm referring to the Society of Actuaries data, group policies, Fortune 500 and mid-sized companies. These are the healthiest amongst us. They're not they're not overweight, they're not obese, they're not unhealthy people. They have access to the best healthcare. And Delta was in circulation in the months prior to the mass vaccination program, but we didn't see a spike, concurrent spike in this group of people. They started spiking August, September, October when corporations started mandating vaccines. So Delta was already in the population in April, May, June, and hospitalizations, that age group was not dying in mass, at least in the group life policy arena. So forget Delta being the cause of taking out.
No, you're not looking at when the cases came. The cases came in the Southeast at that exact time. Florida got hit in that summer and September period. They didn't get hit before with Delta.
This is group life
policy. This was not.
Wait, hold on. You're both talking about two different populations. You're talking about two different populations, aren't we? Yeah.
The Society of Actuaries was not based in Florida. It was not Florida data. This was this is excess claims across their whole group life policies. 84%. 84%. That's so statistically off the charts, and to blame it on Delta seems a little ridiculous to me, especially since Delta was already in the population in the summer.
That's only partially.
But again,
blaming them.
Yeah, I'm saying it could be both too. That's the other thing. That's a part that I'm really struggling with, is that I have a feeling when we really figure this out, there's going to be contributions from both.
Well, why is he not looking at
COVID.
The control group that we have? We have Sweden. We have a great control group of the exact same age groups he's claiming. Negative excess mortality, historic negative excess, not just little, a lot of negative, and with higher vaccine rates than the America. Higher vaccine rates. We didn't have 86% rates in that group.
Hold on. Let's go ahead, Ed.
As he looked at, we put Sweden in our analysis, and their excess deaths trended down, and now they're trending back up. So
they're negative for all of 2023. They're negative for all of 2023.
Wait, no. So hold on. So Truther, where are you getting?
Our data.
Hold on a second. Let's find out where the data.
Well, so there's a great data researcher. There's a great data researcher.
Where do you get it from?
There's a great data researcher on Twitter named Paul Dobsey who does incredible excess mortality data. And he's also shown that the highest vaccinated countries have the lowest excess mortality since vaccination. Like Sweden has the lowest excess mortality in Europe since vaccination. Meanwhile, the highest vaccinated countries like Romania and Bulgaria have the highest historic excess mortality since vaccinations. In fact, Bulgaria has lost almost 1% of their country in excess, which is equivalent to 4 million Americans dead in excess. That is incredible. And they had 29% vaccine rates by the end of 2021. That's lower than Africa. It was an historic failure to vaccinate their elderly and their vulnerable in 2021. And if you look at the U.S.
Were they an older? Hang on, were they an older population?
They're an older country. Definitely an older population, but so is Sweden. Sweden has the lowest excess mortality with one of the highest vaccine rates. No country in Europe has vaccinated more 3+ boosters than Sweden.
Hang on, you're saying it's low in the 20 to 44 age group. Is it also low in the elderly population?
It's low. Well, Bulgaria was low across the board, but Sweden was significantly high in the young population. They vaccinated as young as 12-year-olds, 57%.
I get it.
Yeah.
No, I'm saying the mortality issues. But anyway, it's hard to keep hold of all these things in mind without having graphs and whatnot.
But Ed Dad is specifically looking at 2021 and saying the U.S. excess was because of vaccines, but at the exact same time, the exact same group, we had negative excess in Sweden. If he can't explain that, then it has to be another reason, and that's why I say look at other things. Look at gun violence, overdose deaths, drug violence.
Okay, hold tight. Yeah, where did you get your Sweden data?
The group life policyholders experienced drug violence and overdoses all in the third quarter of 2021. Gotcha. Totally gotcha.
Where did you get your Sweden data, Ed?
It's on our website. It's cited on our website. It's one of the.
Did you collect it? Was it from the government, or was it from the government, or do you guys have some other source? How did you guys get Sweden data?
It was probably government data. I think it's Eurostat data. I can't remember all the data.
Thanks, Ruther.
At the moment, but it's on our website.
Let's see who else. We're trying to get everyone up here. There's a lot of hands up, so give me a moment.
I sent a DM to the Real Truther
to
see if he'll send some of the charts and data and more of the info.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
I don't know quite who to get up here. There's a bunch of hands up, and I'm trying to get everybody a chance here. And we are running low on time. All right, let me bring Joe up here. Joe, give your point of view. What's that, Susan? Oh yeah. The Rumble ranters are at it. Joe, you got to unmute yourself once you get connected. For a second here. Did not work. We're going to get Buck up here. Hang on a second, Buck. There you are. Unmute yourself, Buck. Boy, I think, you know how sometimes we get weird stuff going on here, Caleb? That is happening now. Let's try the only mark.
Right, the only mark.
Yeah, a lot of people with their hands up, and I'm trying to get you guys up here.
If you can hear us, the only mark, we want you.
Hi, how you doing? How's everyone?
There you are. He made it up.
Hi.
Welcome.
How's it going? Yeah,
Good.
I just got a question for Dr. Drew. If he thinks it's the vaccines that are causing all the excess deaths, what about all the deaths that happened in the first year of data?
First year of data from what?
From all the deaths, the first year. If it's the vaccines that's causing all the excess of deaths.
I, by the way, have no opinion. I don't know if it's COVID and vaccine,
Before
or vaccine. You're saying what caused the death before the vaccine?
Yes.
COVID caused the death.
Like
COVID. We were in a pandemic.
Obviously.
We were in a pandemic. Pandemic is defined by. See, that's one of the things that's curious. Hang on, Mark. One of the things that's curious is pandemics are defined by excess mortality, right? When you have excess mortality, you're in a pandemic. That's the one thing I find curious about the present moment. We have persistent excess mortality in many countries. Why aren't we declaring something? Why aren't we declaring something? What's in there? What's causing it? Are we in another pandemic? If it is COVID, we should be freaked out. Why aren't they saying something?
What about harm from COVID?
That's what we're saying. If it's a pandemic, that's what I'm saying. Right. They should be saying this is COVID, but they're not. They're not saying it's COVID. Yeah. They're not saying it's anything. And we're in excess mortality, which is serious business. What's that? What do you think, Ed?
So one of the curious things about the excess, there were excess deaths in 2020. The commentator is absolutely correct. There were about 500,000 excess deaths in 2020. And there were about 500,000 excess deaths in 2021. The most curious thing about that is the mix shift. We saw a huge mix shift to mostly big, standard deviation, historical, deviation from norm for the young in 2021, especially in the fall of 2021, not the spring of 21, not early 21, the fall of 2021. And that spike, that temporal spike, occurred basically in the second half of the year. And that's when the insurance companies raised their hands. They weren't losing any money when old people were dying in 2020 because they'd mostly paid into the system. A lot of them were retired, no longer had group life policies. So this started happening in 21. So until someone can answer for me why a virus would decide to leave young people alone in 2020, but then switch the mix shift in 2021, that's a curious virus as far as I can tell.
Yeah, it's all these things I don't seem to be easily answered. It's such an odd. The Sweden. I've seen Truther put that Swedish data up on Twitter before, and I wish I'd looked at it more carefully, and where that data is coming from and whatnot. I have no reason to disbelieve that's what he's saying. But you got different data looking at it from where again? Your Swedish data?
No, they did. Let me go to our website. They did have the lowest excess mortality, but it started to rise again. So when it went negative,
I see.
But then it started to become less negative, and now it's rising.
And again, that's the 20 to 44 age group.
Well, no, that was all of Sweden, the total population. I don't have the numbers in my head, but you can go to my website and see what happened in Sweden.
Okay.
We put Sweden up there.
Let's kind of wrap things up.
It's part of our analysis. We don't hide Sweden. It's there, but it's also a small population. They didn't do lockdowns, which may have had some confounding factors. We don't know, but it's also a very young population as well, I believe.
Well, what Truther was talking about was, again, 20 to 44-year-olds. He was looking at that population specifically, but I need to see that data again. And again, it needs to be explained. I agree with him. It does need to be explained. All this stuff needs to be explained. And my constant refrain is, why isn't the NHS? Why isn't the CDC? Why isn't the NIH? Why aren't these organizations telling us or asking the questions, or are they, and they just haven't published it yet? Why do we have to sit and kind of figure it out on our own? What do you think?
Well, you brought up a point from the last caller where you said, look, excess mortality seems to still be trending, and we don't have a pandemic declared. Why? I mean, and we're not talking about COVID per se anymore. That is the most curious thing to me. The WHO and everybody kind of put COVID to rest several months ago. Rochelle Walensky resigned from the CDC, said, job well done, hooray. But here we are in 2023 with disabilities in June going up 1 million, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics survey. We have absence rates off the charts. So whatever you want to say about whether I'm right or Real Truther's right, why is the regulatory bodies quiet on this? This is a devastating impact to the economy. So whether we're right on the vaccines or not, we're going to be analyzing these numbers and making calls on the economy and our hedge funds. So, we'll still be right because we'll have the data showing that these trends are in place. And these trends are pandemic-like trends. They're pandemic.
Well, I was going to say, yeah, and maybe the pandemic is depression. Maybe the pandemic is drug addiction. Maybe the pandemic is stroke. I don't know. But it's pandemic-like numbers with no response from the government. And the same government that said one death is too many 18 months ago. Literally, one death is too many. And now here we have literally hundreds of thousands and young people dying and nothing. Zero. Crickets. That's what's upsetting me. If it's COVID, let us know. If it's the lockdowns, let us know. It's just not being declared with any kind of clarity that I can find. Maybe I'm wrong.
One thing that concerns me is, and this is speculation on my part because I'm not a doctor, but I wanted to see the trends come down. I wanted to see excess mortality and disability trend and the growth trends break and roll over. They've reaccelerated. Mm-hmm. So something's going on in the last several months that is alarming. And my fear, and again, I'm not a doctor, is that it's a medium-term effect from the vaccines. And if it is, we got a problem, Houston. So we just need to have an open discussion and talk about these numbers. But there seems to be zero interest from our governments, the media, and the tech companies as well that continue to kind of suppress us, except for Twitter at the moment.
And it's not just in this country, let's be fair. So Truther, I guess, sent over some graphs to Caleb. Caleb, you want to put up what you got? I guess it's the Swedish.
Yeah, I have one chart here. Truther sent this one. I don't know if he wants to call in again and try and explain. This is the chart that he just DM'd me on Twitter. It's showing, it says at the top, Western Europe estimated age standardized excess mortality ages 20 to 44. This is the 2021. I'm downloading and getting the 2022 chart in a second if you guys.
Where is that published? Is that what's in the parentheses there in tiny print?
It doesn't. Well,
okay, it's not on there. And what was the
ESP?
Show me, and then is that what you're seeing?
Can you
Ed,
bring it back up?
Is that what you're seeing, Ed? Where they're going back up the way that final graph is going, or is that temporal we're even looking at? Well, there's different countries. I see.
I don't know what the source. I don't know what I'm looking at, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't really either. It's Western European estimated age standards mortality ages 20. He's just showing that it's less in, I can't read what that says. Finland and Sweden? It's less in Finland and Sweden. Okay.
Yeah,
and then
Sweden,
what's the other
Finland,
graph?
And
okay.
I'm pulling them up now. There's other ones for other years, but I do want to say I haven't actually fact checked what this chart is. This was sent to us by the person who called in a minute ago. So I'm getting the other two.
We're just visualizing what he was reporting. So that's all.
Spain was high.
And how was Spain's vaccine rates? That's the point he's making. There's a relationship between Italy was high in terms of deaths, yeah, but these are older populations, and it gets very complicated. And by the way, he said it was 20 to 44. I don't see that specifically in that data. Well, listen, I've got to do a presentation in a few minutes here, so I want to give Ed a chance to kind of wrap things up. What's keeping you up at night? What are you working on next? Is it the G codes? Is it just trying to get an explanation from somebody on what's in these excess mortality data? What are you thinking these days?
Well, first of all, we dropped the UK PIP data on your show. That's how we released it, and it shows either systemic fraud is occurring, and or all sorts of body systems are off the charts. So there's signals everywhere in the disability system in the UK, and if those rates continue, they'll go bankrupt at some point. So somebody over there needs to, at least engage with us and answer some questions. I just pulled up our Sweden data. Swedish death rates were coming down. They went up in 2020. There were 5% excess deaths, and this is total population. 5% in 2020. It dropped down in 21 to negative 1.3%, and then in 2022 it rose back up to 1.38%. We don't have the 23 numbers. We're working on those, so we'll be interested to see what's going on in 23 in Sweden. But they had more excess deaths in 2020. They came down in 21, and now they're rising again. So, what went on there? That's one country. We see excess deaths rising there as well. So the trend, it's not that Sweden is like out of the woods. There seems to be going the wrong way at the moment.
Interesting. It's to me the greatest problem, just to summarize, is that nobody's really debating whether or not there is excess mortality. The problem is that there's a trend. Not only is there excess mortality, there's a trend in the upward direction, right? For the most part, is that accurate to say that?
Yeah, for the most part. Well, for the most part, yeah. It spiked a lot in 2021, but it's now rising again for the most part.
Yeah. And some of the other data around disability is showing, I've never heard you say that it's going to bankrupt the system. So obviously Great Britain should be very concerned about that. And are they talking about it? Is it something that they can help us understand how they're going to respond to it, or what they think is going on, since they have a crisis on their hands? And for the rest of us, we have essentially pandemic style numbers. Now, do they meet criteria for pandemic? That's not up to me, but it is effectively, in organizations that said one death was too many, we have pandemic level sorts of numbers, and no talking about it, no discussion about it, no public discourse, no press reporting. And at least if it needs to be put to rest for some reason, why not do that? Why not at least acknowledge it and then put it to rest? It seems like they can't put it to rest. Either they don't know what's going on there, they're afraid to ask what's going on there, or they do know and are afraid to talk about it. Isn't that a fair assessment of what's going on?
Correct. And I don't know if you've been following Dr. Offit's comments, but he is now kind of pulling a slight 180 on myocarditis and saying that he's decided not to get boosters for his own personal risk assessment, citing some papers that, yes, myocarditis does occur with this vaccine. There are papers on that, and that seems to be becoming settled scientific debate as we move forward. Nothing's ever settled, but it seems to be that,
right.
We went from no myocarditis to yes, and maybe the vaccine's causing it, and they're quote unquote mild.
Right. And look, mild in my world, when you saw myocarditis of any stripe, it was a medical emergency, and especially in a young person, because you cannot predict who's going to have serious arrhythmias. You can't predict that. There's no such thing. Mild myocarditis, just as likely to cause arrhythmias as serious myocarditis. It's just not as likely to cause cardiomyopathy down the line, which is the dreaded complication, provided you don't have life-threatening arrhythmias. All of these things are dreadful risks and really serious. And throughout my career, medical emergencies that you paid incredibly close attention to, not dismissed it as mild. And the issue about myocarditis being caused by COVID is not settled science. Now there are people going back and forth with data saying it's not so much from COVID, it's more from the vaccine. So again, we need that data to continue to kind of mill through. I'm just glad to see both sides coming through in the literature. It's been such a weird 3 years where it only goes one direction and you don't see the usual back and forth. At least there, you're seeing some back and forth, a conversation in the scientific clinical literature. Ed, we appreciate, as always, you coming in and sharing your data with us. Susan, do you want to say anything before I let Ed go here? Because I know she's an Ed Dowd enthusiast.
Thank you.
she's like, when can we get Ed back? Please bring Ed back. Let's bring Ed in here once a week.
We're embarrassing him.
Well, but people do love hearing the numbers and they love hearing your analysis. And the bottom line is,
can I get some stock picks?
Ed, he's not going to respond.
I don't want to give any financial advice over the air. I like treasury bills. I like treasury bills.
You're long term. I'm assuming you seem longer horizon treasuries, no, or short horizon.
Okay, I'm gonna do that.
No, I'd say for the next year or two, you want to be in treasuries because there's a recession that we're tracking that is either here or coming. We suspect it's already here, and eventually the stock market will figure that out. The average stock has had a bad year, while 6 mega cap stocks are carrying the whole indices, making everyone believe everything's really hunky dory, but it's not. One thing before I go, so I cite the Society of Actuaries. Also, the U.S. disabilities data is a different database. It showed that disabilities for the employed population went up 36% between February of 21 and November of 22. The general U.S. population went up 9%, and not in labor force went up 4%. Those are the people who quit or were fired who could participate and are able and willing to work. And then when we look at employed men and women, they hit new all-time highs in July and August, and the rate of change on employed men and women is off the chart. So, look, at the end of the day, I've said, and the data says it has been detrimental to your health to be employed in 21 and 22 compared to the general U.S. population. That's never occurred in the history of the U.S. So that needs to be investigated. And I said that to Senator Ron Johnson, but it's been crickets from Congress.
And if, let's say, there'd been no pandemic and you suddenly were observing data like this, it would be Panicsville. There would be massive outcry, right? If this was, let's say this was 2010 and you started making observations like this, it would be a crisis, right?
Yeah, so somehow something is affecting our most able-bodied men and women in the labor pool. Why? That would be. That's
the question. Why? Yeah, why? Don't think that you're biasing the question either way. Why? Just answer the question. Why? And if it's depression, and if it's drug addiction, and if it's COVID, and if it's vaccine, and if it's all of it, we need to understand that. When somebody needs to stand up and say, that's it, it's all of the above. And here's how we know that. But it needs to be an official. It needs to be somebody who takes an official position on this. Seems to me. I don't know. Maybe it does need to be official. Maybe it just needs to be worked out in the literature over time. I guess we will know soon enough. Ed, thank you so much. FinanceTechnologies.com. Is that where we go?
That's where you go. All of our data is there, and I'll send over this. I pulled up the Sweden chart. I'll send it to you guys so you can look at it yourselves.
Cool. And on X or Ed Dowd, is that the Twitter handle?
At Dowd Edward, DOWD Edward, and Getter at Edward Dowd.
Okay. Thank you, my friend. We'll talk to you very soon.
Take care.
All right. Thank you. And for the rest of you, appreciate you being here. Tomorrow, Susan, we have kind of an interesting combination of Joshua Gutzkow, I hope I pronounced that correct, and George Borrello. We have, of course, with Dr. Kelly Victory and Bobby Ann Cox. Lionel comes back on Thursday.
Wait, there's 4 people tomorrow?
Yeah, it's 1 and then I think 2. That's how we're doing it. And then Jay Bhattacharya
like 3
coming back on October 5th. Rob Schneider coming in on October 10th, maybe with some special guests. So
he's fed up.
Well, Rob and I are going to revisit our history together and sort of see how it looks in the retrospective.
Your COVID history together.
Yeah, we're going to see how it looks retrospectively. So appreciate everybody that participated here. We appreciate it very much, and we'll try to get more calls in. It's really hard to do that and get everyone up. But I do appreciate the people that participated, and we will see you tomorrow. What's that?
We might possibly be doing some extra caller shows coming up as we get closer to my wife's due date with the baby. So caller shows might be coming up.
Good.
Why? Because you can't.
Because they're easier for me. Well, yeah, because they're easier than setting up guests, and I don't want to have like a senator that's scheduled to come on the show, and then the baby decides to come that evening, and we have to cancel on a senator.
Yeah,
so we might be doing some caller shows.
Good idea. So it'll be all you callers.
Yeah.
You're all you, boo.
Okay, guys, we will see you tomorrow at 3:00. You got it. Ask Dr. Drew is produced by Caleb Nation and Susan Pinsky. As a reminder, the discussions here are not a substitute for medical care, diagnosis, or treatment. This show is intended for educational and informational purposes only. I am a licensed physician, but I am not a replacement for your personal doctor, and I am not practicing medicine here. Always remember that our understanding of medicine and science is constantly evolving. Though my opinion is based on the information that is available to me today, some of the contents of this show could be outdated in the future. Be sure to check with trusted resources in case any of the information has been updated since this was published. If you or someone you know is in immediate danger, don't call me, call 911. If you're feeling hopeless or suicidal, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255. You can find more of my recommended organizations and helpful resources at drdrew.com/help. Whenever I get drunk or high, I think about what I'm not doing and need to be doing in my life. Stop procrastinating, get back to the gym, clean your fucking room. But when I'm sober, I procrastinate. Sit around, watch YouTube, play video games. Why, when I get fucked up, do I finally find the motivation to actually do something with my life? And when I wake up, that's not really what I want to do. It sounds like there's a lot of unhappiness here. And I think you need to get at that a little bit. It's sort of a perfect circumstance for therapy to see what are you really feeling during the day that's keeping you stuck. You know, one of the things about, hey, go see our friends at BetterHelp even. I mean, that's the kind of thing that they are really very good at, is this sort of kind of cognitive behavioral therapies where you just kind of examine what is going on here and why you have this distinct need or desire to do something more, yet in your sort of settled state when all your defenses are up, you can't get on with it.